When General Redvers Buller died in 1908, he left behind a reputation for having cracked up. For him, the phrase excellent major, mediocre colonel, abysmal general was coined. When a young officer, he had fought in Africa and proved himself a valiant and heroic soldier. Fiery and passionate, in fact his only problem then seemed to be channeling his energy in the right direction.
He had a very bad temper, and he knew he had a bad temper, and he had the greatest difficulty in controlling it. When he was about 16 years old in a game of rugger, he lost a match by going for his opponent instead of the ball, and admitted afterwards that ever since that instance he'd done his best, often without success, to control his temper.
In 1899, the British were at war with the Boers over land in South Africa. Based on his reputation for previous heroics, Buller was catapulted way beyond his level of experience to Commander-in-Chief. His limit of competence was about to be reached.
There was a feeling that it would all be over by Christmas and that Buller really only had to turn up. They expected a walkover and that Buller would lead a walkover into Pretoria.
He did not particularly want the appointment. He had a comfortable, happy and busy retirement to look forward to. He had doubts, clearly, also, as to whether he was, in any capacity, a good number one.
I have always considered that I was better as second in a complex military affair than as an officer-in-chief command. I had never been in a position where the whole load of responsibility fell on me.
Dear General Sir Redvers, just a quick note to say good luck, old boy. We're all relying on you. We know it's a bloody awful mess out there, but you are the right man to sort it out.
By the time Buller arrived, 3 British towns had already been besieged by the Boers, Ladysmith in Natal and Kimberley and Mafeking in Cape Colony. In Ladysmith, there were about 15,000 British troops bottled up by the Boers, and that was the area where Buller, anyway, felt that the most danger was.
Unused to creating overall strategy, Buller focused on the specific, something he thought he could deal with.
He must go to Natal, take command there, and relieve Ladysmith. And Buller believed that the only way of doing so was to fight his way through the Boer siege lines. And the first time he tries it is at Colenso, and he tries a frontal assault. Frontal assaults in the face of modern weapons are not a terribly good idea.
Stressed out by seeing his tactics go wrong, Buller did not have the training to adapt. The pressure was rising.
He had seen everything go wrong which could go wrong at Colenso. He'd seen the guns lost. He'd seen the Irish Brigade suffer appalling casualties. So he was quite clearly in a state of shock.
Immediately after Colenso, there is a substantial confidence crisis. Buller initially says he hasn't got the men to break through to Ladysmith. He does contemplate surrender. Now that is something which would have been totally unacceptable.
You're basically in an abattoir, sending people forward to die. And you could reach a point where you think, what the hell is the mission? Why are these young people dying? I am the one responsible for this. And that could make you indecisive because you've lost the vital ingredient of leadership. What is it? Confidence.
Buller's confidence was on the wane. This was to become known as Black Week, as 2 other defeats swiftly followed. It was Buller's responsibility as commander, and back in England it was assumed the great warrior had cracked. A junior officer, General Warren, was sent out to help him. The next battle at Spion Kop was to be Buller's most costly blunder. The plan was for one force to approach Ladysmith as a diversion, whilst the main attack moved through the valleys toward the town. Warren was in charge of one force, but overcautious he hesitated. As a senior officer, Buller should have given Warren orders to get on with it. But dithering himself, he didn't take the lead. Battle stress was taking its toll, and he was making his fatal mistake. Without any clear logic, Warren wanted to abandon the advance through the valleys and take the hill at Spion Kop. Without any clear reason, Buller agrees, changing his plans randomly.
He had spent several days thinking, shall I relieve Warren or shall I not relieve Warren? And he then made the self-admitted error of not relieving Warren.
There isn't a doctrine of command in the British Army until well into the 20th century. They don't really understand necessarily what the precise role of the commander should be. So on some occasions they interfere when they shouldn't, and on other occasions when they should intervene, they don't.
Climbed at night, in fog, Spion Kop was taken with little incident. Then in the morning it was revealed that the celebratory troops were only on a plateau, overlooked by the higher hills and enemy rifles. Soon it was like shooting fish in a barrel, and the ground was littered with hundreds of British bodies. Bizarrely, Buller withdrew all other troops from positions where they might have been able to limit the massacre. He was frozen, crippled by a lack of confidence and the horror of seeing his men die. He had confronted battle stress, but he didn't have the training to deal with it. He had finally cracked.
He knew that things were going wrong, and he knew was committing a mistake.
I ought to have assumed command myself. I blame myself now for not having done so. I did not, because I thought that I should discredit General Warren in the estimation of his troops, and that if I were shot and he had to withdraw across the Tugela, and they'd lost confidence in him, the consequences might be very serious.
This was Buller's catch-22. He loved his men and couldn't bear to see them die, but because of this his action was hesitant, and that caused his men to be killed. Buller never had the ability to focus on the bigger picture that enables a leader to deal with the death of their men. Today, after decades of psychoanalysis, psychologists speculate and make vague theories to explain the man who said he was better suited to be second in command.
Why would he have said that? My guess is that it's because he needed the support of someone else in the decisions he was taking and the actions he undertook, perhaps occasioned by his childhood.
He had an affectionate family. His father was a slightly remote figure, but he had a strong bond with his sisters. He was brought up by a very loving mother, who very sadly died when he was 16 years old.
I think the issue for him was that even as a general officer, he remained his mother's boy, and that was always going to limit how far he could go in decision-making and in objectivity. Whenever he felt he was not accepted by others, that was a terrible challenge to him. He did not have a true killer instinct.
It's also his tragedy that, in a sense, he is placed in a position which he wasn't suited for.
In 1900, General Roberts arrived from England to take over command, and Buller became his subordinate, returning to his level of competence.
Having that burden lifted from him does enable him to concentrate much more on the task in hand, which is simply, in the first instance, to relieve Ladysmith. Ladysmith is relieved at the end of February of 1900.
Buller fell prey to the second unpredictable factor. He was untrained to deal with the horror of supreme command. He was a great human being, but in the final analysis, unfit to lead, able to inspire men to follow him in battle, but when promoted beyond his level of competence, unable to lead them in war.